Hey everyone, welcome to Meet the Thriller Author. I'm your host, Alan Peterson, and in today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing Bobby Nash of BobbyNash.com. How are you, Bobby?
I'm good, Alan. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for coming on the show. So before I get going with the questions, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Well, my name is Bobby Nash. I'm a writer. So it's the part where you wait for everybody to go, "Hi, Bobby." But no, I write a lot of different types of things. I write novels and comic books and some short pieces for anthologies. I've written a couple of screenplays, things like that. But yeah, I think my first love is comics, but a close second is writing a good thriller.
I noticed that when I was doing a little research on you, that you're not only a member of the International Thriller Writers, but also the International Association of Media Tie-ins. So what's a tie-in?
Media tie-ins are things like novels or comics or short stories that are based off of a movie, TV, older characters, things like that. I've written characters like the Green Hornet, things like that. So yeah.
Oh, cool. So like this. The Star Wars book?
Star Wars novels would be media tie-ins, and I'd love to write a Star Wars book if anyone there is listening. Yeah, so I've written a few things like that with pre-existing characters for other publishers. Some of the pulp stuff falls into that category. I've done a couple of I did a couple where we took some old radio shows and did new stories based on the old radio shows. So different tie-ins that way.
That's pretty interesting. That's cool. I didn't even realize what that was. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's you get to play, especially if you know the characters, you get to play in a familiar sandbox. Like when you're writing the Green Hornet, I knew who the Green Hornet was, so I had a lot of fun, being able to just, I'm getting to write the Green Hornet doing something, and it's pretty cool from a fan perspective, but also from a professional perspective. Those often come with a built-in audience, which is always helpful.
And are they like your stories, or does the whoever owns that series, do they provide ideas, or?
It could be a little of both. In what I've done so far, whatever publisher has gotten the rights to it, they have approached me, and they're usually anthologies, and they'll approach and say, "Here's what we're going to do. Give us a pitch." And so you write a pitch for them that the publisher has to approve, but then they also have to have the approval process of the people that own the characters. So it's almost like adding another approval step, because the people that own the character obviously want to make sure their character is treated fairly. And so so it's fun. It's you get to just pitch stories. So it's most of the time they're original stories. Sometimes you're asked to adapt something. I worked on a graphic novel where we adapted Edgar Rice Burroughs' At the Earth's Core novel. So that way, in that particular case, it wasn't write a new story set in that world. Let's retell this story. And we're doing the second book now. Actually, I had a discussion with my editor and the artist today, and we've just started working on book 2 of that. So hopefully we'll get to adapt all 5 of them. That would be pretty cool.
And so now with regards to your thrillers, are you... I noticed you have a couple of series out of your thriller books. Have you always enjoyed reading thrillers?
I have, yeah. I love a good mystery and a good suspenseful thriller, and in books and in movies. I love that. Not can I figure it out before they do, or not knowing what's coming. There's that, and the atmosphere, which is when you start writing it, it's harder to write that atmosphere than you thought it would be. Yeah. But it's a nice challenge, and I do enjoy that thrilling adventure aspect of things, or it could be you can almost have a thriller in any genre. I mean, you can have a crime thriller, a suspense thriller, a mystery thriller, a sci-fi thriller, but it's just telling that thriller type of story for me is fun, and I love it.
I was looking at your Evil Ways book and the Harold Palmer thriller books that you've been writing. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. Evil Ways was actually my first published novel. It wasn't the first one I wrote. The first one I wrote was, like most people who you've probably interviewed say, "Oh, my first one was awful." But Evil Ways was my first published book. It'll be out 10 years this year. So yes, I'm just now getting around to book two, because I've been busy.
Yeah, all those tie-ins
But
and everything else. Right?
yeah, but it's Harold Palmer is a character that I created. He is an FBI agent, and in Evil Ways, it's kind of seeing him off duty. He's something happens to him at the beginning of the book, and he has to kind of take some time off, and so he goes to visit his brother, who is a reporter, who gave up a really promising career working as a reporter in the Atlanta area to buy a small town newspaper. So now he has a newspaper staff of him and one other person. So he's enjoying that challenge. So they haven't seen each other in a few years, so they get together and they're catching up when they get involved with. There's a murder that happens in that town, and they end up getting involved in the case, which leads to a lot of other thrilling, hopefully, things happening. And I had a ball playing with the mystery aspect of it, because that was really the first time I had written an honest to goodness mystery where I didn't want to let the reader know who the killer is. So you have to kind of figure it along with them, which as a writer, you understand how hard it is to lay those clues, because you know them. So in your head, you're thinking, oh, everybody's going to get this clue, and then it's really satisfying later when people are coming up and going, but I thought it was this guy, or So I love that. Apparently, I was able to fool a lot of people with the red herrings, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's got to be a real thriller. Those type of thrillers too. You keep the reader second guessing themselves or going down the wrong road.
Yes, one of the best compliments I received about Evil Ways. I worked for a company at the time, and when the book came out, and I go into the office one morning and I sit down and my phone rings at my desk and I answer it, and it's a lady that worked upstairs, and she had bought a copy of the book. And I answer the phone. I said, "Good morning." She goes, "You bastard." And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "I am so tired this morning." I'm like, "Okay, why is that my fault?" She said, "Because I couldn't stop reading your book and I stayed up all night to finish it."
Oh, that is awesome.
And that was probably one of the coolest things anyone could ever have said to me. And yeah, so I love it. And the character of Harold, I like the character. I'm currently working on Evil Intent, which is we'll actually see him doing his job as an FBI agent, and I'm a good 60,000 words into that one, so almost there.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it's taken me a lot longer to get to the second one than it should have, but things happen.
Yeah. Yep. Good things happen. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, but my plan is I have ideas for at least 3 or 4 Harold books already in my head, so hopefully that'll happen.
And so now, when you who are some of the thriller authors who you like to read and who inspired you, or who have influenced your writing?
Oh wow, well, there's a lot. I get influences from everywhere, but certainly in this type of genre. I certainly do enjoy things like Lawrence Block or Mickey Spillane. If you want, looking at the writers that have been around a while, they knew how to tell that mystery noir kind of feel. More modern writers I certainly like Michael Connelly or Alex Cava, who do this same type of crime thriller stories. So there's a few people like that. I certainly don't miss any of the books that come out from those particular authors, because I know I'm in for a good ride when I get one of their books.
So you still find time to read thrillers?
Well, yes, but it might take me 3 months to finish it.
Yeah,
it takes me almost as long to read one now as it does to write one, because there's not a lot of time. And I recently rejoined the corporate life, so I recently took a new day job, so I thought I had no time when I was writing full time. I really have no time now.
Yeah, that puts a damper on the reading schedule.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like, okay, I've got 5 minutes. I can knock out a chapter in 5 minutes, and so. But I still love to read, and my to read pile just continues to grow larger and larger and larger. But I'll get to them eventually.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So,
Hopefully.
yeah. And so now, what inspired you to write your first book?
Well, I had been writing comics before I wrote my first novel, and I wanted to just see if I could do it. And I wrote my first novel, and I finished it. It was crap. I finished it, but it was very short. It was more like a novella, but it was done. I finished it. It was a sense of accomplishment, and so I decided, I really want to do this again. Because I felt really good, and I was like, I'd like to try to tell a different type of story, or a type of story like I would like to read. And one day it was just that simple. I just says, I'm going to write I'm going to write a novel. And I had an idea. I had a friend of mine who was wanting to do like a low budget film. And so I'd pitched him some ideas. And one of the ideas that I had pitched him became part of what's in Evil Ways. And so I started like tacking on stuff to that. And so from that little germ of an idea, I was able to build this, I won't say world, but I definitely built this community because I invented my own town. So you've got all the inhabitants of the town, and I have a nice map of the town and what it looks like and what's there. And I've used that town a couple of times because it's the same town. Part of Deadly Games takes place in the same town. We'll return to it in Evil Intent for just a brief moment. And there's a secondary character in Evil Ways who is the sheriff. And the sheriff, ever so often, I hear him nibbling at the back of my brain going, hey, when do I get my book?
Yeah.
So I have ideas. It's just finding the time to get them all done.
Yeah, so you're not the only one that has all these voices in your head, huh?
Oh, no, they're all in there. Yeah, they're in there. They're talking. They argue. They fight to see who can get to the front. Yeah, we're all quite insane. Yeah, if you know an author, yeah, it's a good bet they're borderline insane.
And where do you usually get your ideas from then? When you get one of these ideas in your head and you have to write it, where do they come from?
Wow, that's one of the things I get asked this question a lot, and I don't have a good answer because I guess they come from different places. Sometimes an idea just you'll see something, or you'll hear a news story, or you'll read something, or someone will just say something and it sparks something. And then there are other times where like an idea just hits you full, almost like it runs you over. And suddenly you have, in your head, you've already plotted out half a book. And then it's awesome when that happens. And then there are other times where it's like you get the seed of an idea and then you have to like really work at it to make it come together. So yeah, I really don't know. I mean, I've heard those theories that there's like a big cloud, like the idea cloud is out there, and that we all tap into it. And I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, sometimes I can't explain it. Sometimes they come out of nowhere, and you're like, what made me think of that? It's not, because a lot of times it's stuff you're interested in or you've researched or whatever. But the last like big idea that hit me was for a character who's like a mountain climber. Now, I'm not a mountain climber. I know nothing about climbing mountains, but now I've got this story idea about a mountain climber. So I don't know where they come from. I'm just glad they keep coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because when they stop, I'm really in trouble. But so I try to listen to them. A lot of times I go, man, that's a great idea. Okay, let me put that over here in this box because I have deadlines and I can't work on you right now. So yeah, see, when you start working with publishers too, you have to learn to that was the biggest change for me, going from a fan writing, writing to being paid to write. Is now suddenly it's like I don't get to just go where the muse takes me. I have to like tie the muse up over in a corner because this book has to be finished first. Mm-hmm. And they're like, but that's not what I want to work on. And we're just like, tough. And so yeah, you have to. And that was hard for me because before I started working, for publishers, it was what do I feel like working on tonight? That great, and off we're running. And yeah, now it's a little more rigid, I think, sometimes.
You get the deadline looming. Do you ever like get writer's block or something for the deadlines, or you got it pretty good? You got a pretty good system going.
I don't think I've ever had writer's block to the term of like not knowing what to do. My problem is usually getting set down and started. Once I'm in front of the computer and I'm typing away, I'm good. I'm in it. I'm good to go. My problem is getting my butt in the chair because there's all of the distractions. There's well, what's the old joke? A writer wakes up and says, "Yep, I need to write today, but first I'm going to clean the office." And you finish cleaning the office, okay, time to write. But first, and so yeah, so I think there's a lot of us that probably have that problem.
Yeah,
But
that's when my wife comes home and everything's very clean. She goes, "Did you have problems today writing?"
exactly, yeah. It's like, yeah, my office is clean. I go, oh, didn't feel like writing today, did you? So, but yeah, so it's yeah. But once I get started, I'm usually okay, and I always juggle multiple projects. That's the other thing too with that I've had to learn with, because as when you're doing the books, the writing it is only a part of it. Because you write it, it goes off to the editors. You start working on the next thing. Then that project comes back with edits, so you have to stop, work on that, send it off, go back to work on the other one. Oh, here comes the galley. Okay, stop, work on the galleys, check that. Okay, back over, And so you can have things coming in, so you have to learn to juggle these things quite a bit. And it took me a little while to get used to it, but I've been doing this a little while now, so it seems it's a little easier. Not a lot easier, a little easier.
A little bit. Huh?
A little bit.
So now you had mentioned before that had an idea about the mountain climbing. You'd never been a mountain climber, but how about from your own real life experiences? Have you find that ever finds a way into your books, into the stuff that you're writing?
Oh, sure, sure. Especially in terms of, maybe not in terms of like the big action or what the story's about, but in terms of the little things. It was a lesson I learned on Evil Ways. I was taking a evening class. I live in Georgia, and so I'm like 30 miles away from the University of Georgia. And so once they had this class, it met once a week. It was a creative writing class, and basically you went in, read to a group, and got instant feedback not only from the teacher but from the other students. And so I was reading Evil Ways because I was working on it while I was taking this class, and there's a scene where the two brothers meet up for the first time in the book. And they haven't seen each other in a while. It's kind of a reunion, and the characters are together. And I read this in front of this group, and it came back with a very lukewarm reception. And there was one lady there that said, "My problem is not with what you wrote, but it's like they don't feel like brothers. If you hadn't told me they were brothers, in the narrative, I'd have never known because they don't feel like brothers." And that was the first time I thought, maybe I should, figure out what I'm doing wrong. And then I got thinking, wait a minute, I have a brother. How do my brother and I, talk to one another? How do we act around each other? So actually, in Evil Ways, I gave the two brothers who are the main protagonists, I gave one of them my brother's personality, and I gave the other one mine. So now when they meet, it's almost how my brother and I would meet each other. And when I went back a week or so later and read that, it seemed to generate more where they're like, you could take out a lot of this stuff now telling us they're related because we get it. And so I found little things like that from my real life help make the characters more real. Or sometimes I'll mention like, this character had a job and it's like a job I had once, or little things like that, those type of experiences.
And do you set your books in in Georgia, like areas that you're familiar with? Or
sometimes yes, sometimes no. Evil Ways takes place in a small town in Georgia that is very much like the one I live in, but I wanted things that my town doesn't have, so I just invented my own. And so I've used that town a couple times, but I've written like Evil Intent. Most of it takes place in Washington D.C. and Tennessee because we're chasing a bad guy. I'm working on another thriller that features a Washington D.C. homicide detective and a Secret Service agent, both working different sides of the same case. That all takes place in Washington D.C. and I've never been to Washington D.C.
So what do you do for that? You do a lot of research and
yeah, a lot of Google, a lot of looking at maps of the city, and I had a friend that lived in Washington for a time, so I certainly have bent his ear a little bit about tell me a little bit about the city and things like that.
Yeah, it's Google Maps and the I like to do the YouTube videos because if you do like driving and put the name of the city or the town, you'll find a video of somebody driving in that town. I find
Absolutely.
that so awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can it gives you a good feel for what the city's like. I mean, obviously there's nothing like the real thing of visiting, and it's one of those things I need to do. But yeah, I've certainly not. I mean, if I write a story set in outer space, I can't visit there. So
Yet.
yes, yet. So some of the imagination has to go into play, but I didn't want to set everything I do in Georgia. So.
I was reading your bio, and you mentioned that you also do some acting, and you acted in an episode of The Following. I love that show.
I was an extra. I don't. There's not a lot of. I mean,
You were there, right?
I was. I was there. I was in the pilot episode.
Cool.
They filmed the pilot here in Georgia, and then the rest of it they filmed in New York. So I worked on it for 3 days. For the 3 seconds of screen time I've got, I worked for 3 days because a lot of my stuff got cut. Because there's a lot of scenes I'm watching it, I'm like, the scene starts, and I'm like, crap, they cut just where I moved off camera. Ah, crap, they cut where I moved off. It's yeah. But I do have one scene where I walk behind Kevin Bacon, so I'm on camera in the shot with the star of the show, and I now win that game every time someone wants to play it.
Yeah, the 6 degrees of separation.
That's right.
Yeah, was it 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? It's just what I was thinking.
Yep, it's like people are like, "Ooh, yeah," because I did a movie where I actually had lines. I worked on a comedy horror called Camp Massacre, which when I filmed it, it was called Fat Chance, which is a title I like better. But as we worked on this, and one of the guys that had a role in the movie worked with somebody. Didn't work with Kevin Bacon, but worked with somebody that worked with him, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're all like a lot closer now in that game." And I posted the photo of me in the same screenshot with him. I said, "I win."
Done.
Yeah. So I did get to meet him. It was very nice. It was a fun shoot. Like I said, I worked on it for 3 days. I played an FBI agent, and so yeah, 3 days in a suit and a tie in the warm Georgia summer. With a gun, had a gun, a badge,
Sweet.
credentials. It was wonderful. I loved it. But the biggest bonus, as much fun as it was, you get to meet some very interesting people. One of the guys that was playing a U.S. Marshal works on a SWAT team, so I was able to ask him all kind of questions. There were a few different other people, but there was a real life FBI agent on set as a consultant. And so at one point, he's standing off by himself. And we're not shooting anything, so I go up and I introduce myself, and we talk for a moment. And I mentioned that I write a book about an FBI agent, and I'd love to come and talk to someone or get some information. And he's like, "Well, actually, that's my job." He says, "That's what I do." And he says, "Now you have to get vetted." So he got the process started. So they had to background check me and all that stuff. But I got to go, and I got to spend a day at the FBI Atlanta office and hang out. They gave me a bunch of literature. And so I was telling him, I asked a bunch of general questions, but then I got to specific questions about Book 2, Evil Intent. And actually, one of the things I had mentioned happens to the character. And he was like, "Oh, it's funny you should mention it." And he goes into this story where something similar had happened to him. And then he was telling me what happened after. And so I incorporated part of his story into the book to give it a little more realism. So, and that was cool. So I had a great time spending the day there, and I mean, it was really good.
Yeah, that's like an added huge bonus. All the people you had access to during the shoot.
Yeah, and it's fun. I do enjoy doing the extra stuff. Now that I'm like I said, I'm back in the corporate world, so it's a little harder to do them. Which is killing me right now because they're filming Captain America 3 here.
Yeah, what's up with Atlanta, with Georgia all of a sudden? Walking Dead, everything seems to be filmed there now.
Well, they've got these great incentives, tax incentives.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
And they're building studios right and left. I mean, there are several. And so for a couple of years there, when I was home writing full time, it was great to do it every once in a while because it gets you out of the house. Writing your home stuck by yourself most of the time. So I could take a day here and a day there and go off and work. So I've done a few things. Some probably the most notables where you really see me. You get a great shot of me in Dumb and Dumber 2.
Oh, really? I saw that. I just saw that a couple months ago.
When they walk, they're walking into the convention, and the guy has mistaken him, Jeff Daniels' character, for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going in, and the guy stops and he's asking Jim Carrey's character, does he have Asperger's? And as they're walking by, I'm standing there in line right beside them. Like, I couldn't see them, but I know they're like right beside me. So I'm in the trailer too. So it's right there, and I'm just standing there looking pissed off because I'm like in this long line, and so I did that. I've done some what else was I in? I was in *Halt and Catch Fire*. It was on AMC. I was in the first episode of *Satisfaction* on USA. I don't know if you saw that one. The main character is on an airplane, and I'm a pretty big guy, and I came in with like a big over-the-shoulder satchel, and I get to try to squeeze past the main actor and knock him over. For hours, I knocked this poor man around, and so had a ball. It's fun. It's fun, and I love the behind-the-scenes, getting to watch how they do things, and so it's fun. I do enjoy it. But I would never call myself an actor, though. I know my limitations.
Yeah, well, you have credits now, right? So are you in that?
That's true.
Yeah. So there you go.
I am in IMDb. So.
I can remember the name of that. They're cool. There you go.
Yeah, but they're fun. It's fun. Like I said, I enjoy it. They pay you. You don't pay much, but they pay you. They feed you. Now, I like working TV. The TV shoots better because they're faster. There's not as much downtime, but you eat better on a movie shoot.
Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me. They got a bigger budget, right?
Right, but on a movie shoot, I mean, they can yell cut, and it's an hour before they roll the next bit. And so everybody goes to their trailers, and like they get in a car, they drive them to their trailer, and on TV they yell cut. The actors go sit in a chair, 10 feet away. They come over, move the cameras. Say, okay, everybody, let's go, and you keep going because it's so much. Because you have to get through a lot in a week, and so a lot of fun.
You had mentioned before that you about your writing day being locked up in the house and all that. Could you describe like a writing days for you?
When I was home all day, when I was writing full time, I'm a late sleeper. I like to stay up late and get up late, so I'd get up around 11. Get up, first few bits of the day, answering emails, doing social media stuff. I try to post something to my website if it needed it. Various things like that are writing related, but you're not actually putting words down. And so I would do all that, answer my emails, set up posts for the day, anything like that needed to be done. That would usually take a couple of hours. Take a little break, eat some lunch. Run errands if you needed to. Then I'd come back and I'd work into the evenings, usually stopping at whatever time I decided to stop to eat. And after I'd eat, I'd watch a little TV or read or go out or whatever. Go back, do a little more work, go to the gym. I'd go to the gym. My brother and I would go to the gym at like midnight when it's nice and empty. Go to the gym, come back, work a couple more hours, go to bed, get up and do it all again the next day. That was when I was working full time. Mm-hmm. Now I get up, I go to work. I get up around 7:30 in the morning to get ready for work. I go to work. I get home about 8 at night or a little after. And by the time I eat and watch a little TV, I've got maybe an hour or so. I'll knock out something if I can, and then spend the weekends writing. So the other what my day looked like beforehand is how my Saturdays and Sundays look now.
So cramming in 2 days now versus the
right. I'm getting what I used to get done in 6 days. I'm getting done now in 2, or trying to. I've fallen a little behind as a result, but I'm making plans to get caught back up. So
And so it sounds like you work on different projects at the same time. You mentioned you're writing a couple projects. Is that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm always juggling things because in addition to doing things like my novels, which I do, and then I either sell or sometimes I'll publish myself, but I don't do that very often. I don't enjoy the production side of it as much for doing it, so I don't self-publish a lot. But working with different publishers now, I work for at least 5 or 6 at any year. Like I said, you never know when stuff's coming back. I know I like right now I'm working on Evil Intent, the novel, but I have a couple of comic scripts that need to be done. And so what I'll do is I'll work on the novel, get a chapter or two done, take a break, jump over to the comics, write some comics, then jump back because you kind of use almost like different like creative muscles because the formatting is so different, and how you write each of those is different. So it's almost like taking a break from the novel. You're still working, but you've taken a break, so your brain's a little freed up from writing prose, and you're working on the comic, and then vice versa. So I'm always working at least 2 projects. But then you've also got things like I've got books that are done and out, or stories that are done and out that could show up at any time with edits, and so then you have to stop and work those in. Or sometimes you'll have to we need a pitch. It may not be for a book I'm going to work on for 3 or 4 months, but I'll have to go ahead and do the pitch now. So there's a lot of those type of start and stop and multiple things coming in that you just kind of have to juggle them into the mix.
And what's your latest novel that's been published recently?
What is my latest novel that's been published? That's a very good question. Hang on a second. I had to pull up my website. Isn't that sad?
That means you're busy. You have so many projects going. That's good.
Yeah. The last novel that I wrote that came out is called Domino Lady. It's called Money Shot. Domino Lady is a pulp character from the 1930s. She actually appeared in 6 stories in 1936, I think. And I've been writing the character for Moonstone Books. I wrote her in the anthology. I've written some comics with her. I'm writing some comics with her that are coming out. And Joe, the publisher over there, contacted me, and he goes, I know you like writing thrillers. He says, have you ever thought about writing? He says, what I'd like a political thriller with Domino Lady. And I'm like, done. And so it's just one of those fate things. In the background of several of the stories I had written with her in the comics and in the anthology, there was a character in the original who was a big game hunter turned actor. And he's one of the villains, but he's not like, he's not like a main villain, but he's one of the few characters that shows up multiple times. And there's a line in one of the original stories where he mentions that one of his goals is he's going to be governor one day. And so I kept playing with that, and I kept just using it in the background of stories. Someone would mention him, or there'd be a poster that he's running for governor or something. So when he said political thriller, I'm like, wait a minute, I've been setting up this story where he runs for governor. And so I used that as my basis, and so wrote this novel where, she knows he's dirty, and so she throws herself in with his competition to try to stop him. And then if there's someone gets killed, and so there becomes a bit of a murder mystery, and there's some thriller aspect, some crime drama, and so it was fun. I love the character, and I've gotten to write her several times, and I'm also writing some comics now with her. So cool character.
Is it set in the 30s or is it contemporary?
No, it's set in the 30s. We kept it, and they wanted to keep her in the time. She's. I think the character could work in contemporary times, but they wanted to keep her in that 1930s Hollywood setting, which is a beautiful setting to put a story in. And so that's where she is, and she's she had this. And this is not something I created. This was from the original character. She had this very interesting way that she went about things. Obviously, the way she dressed, she's in like a a dress that slid up all, showing a lot of leg, and she certainly used her feminine wiles and was not afraid of a little sex and flirting and whatever. But she also was smart. She would write these letters to whatever the bad guy was, and she dealt with like dirty politicians, corrupt cops, mob bosses, things like that. And so she would write them these letters on black paper with white ink. She would pen these notes, and she would tell them, I know what you did. Here's what I'm going to do to you. Here's what I'm going to take from you, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, she'd lay it all out for them. So they're on guard for her. And then she would, using not only her, her feminine wiles and her looks and things, because she would oftentimes go in without the mask, but she would use her brains to outsmart them. So here they think, well, this girl isn't going to do anything to us, and she would find a way to outsmart them and get the goods on them, and almost have her laugh at them moment at the end as they get carted off to jail or shot or whatever.
Yeah, this is like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and she's a really cool character. I've probably written her more than any other character in terms of number of stories I've written, which is fun. So they keep inviting me back, so I must be doing something they like. So.
And so, do you find it's hard to write for female protagonists?
No, not really. It might have been at the beginning, but I've gotten to know the character so well that it's not really that hard. But no, it's, really once I got to know the character and I got in her head and she got in mine, and yeah, so now it's more of a, I don't necessarily think about it, I gotta go write this female character. It's just, I gotta go write Ellen, or I gotta write Domino Lady. And I actually think of her as two different characters sometimes. Ellen is her without the mask, and Domino Lady is her with the mask, because she kind of, like most of these people that put on masks, they adopt kind of a persona when they're wearing the mask. And her mask, I mean, it wouldn't take a lot to figure out who she is, because it's just a little domino mask, which is where she gets her name from. But yeah, it's just, when I wrote the character, I fell in love with the character, and was very excited when I got to come back and write her again. And then they asked me back again and again. So I've been very lucky with her, and I've actually had people refer to me as the Domino Lady guy, which I'm proud of.
Yeah, I like that, the Domino Lady guy. Yeah,
the Domino Lady guy. And there are other people that write the character as well. I mean, I'm not the only one. My editor on the Domino Lady novel was one of the co-writers. She and I wrote some comics together. Nancy Holder, who writes a lot of young adult fantasy and tie-in books as well. Yeah, she's the big time New York Times best-selling author. So I'm it's always good to have her share a project with me. And so when she agreed to be my editor, I was very excited. So, and I think we work well together. So, and she knows the character pretty well too. So I think we really play off each other well when it comes to knowing what makes her tick.
Okay, well, I'm going to wrap things up here. But
sorry, I can't talk. Sorry.
Oh, no. That's it. It's been fascinating. It's been awesome. Is there anything else before we go about that you would like listeners to know about, and where can they find you online? I don't know if you're on Facebook and all that.
Yeah, I am. BobbyNash.com is my main website. I try to update it at least 2 or 3 times a week. There are links to everything on there, including Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, Instagram. Because I won't just throw all these different names at you for how to find me. But if you look up Bobby Nash, I'm not hard to find in any of them. They're all links on my website there too. So yeah, feel free, shoot me a message, say hi. I love meeting and talking to people. I do a lot of conventions. So, if you see me at a con, come up, say hi, tell me you heard me on the podcast. I mean, that's always cool. I love it when people tell me they've heard me on something, because I always assume no one listens.
Yeah. Is it really a podcast if no one listens?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I used to co-host the Earth Station 1 podcast. That was a weekly show, and when I went back to work, it was just one of the things that had to go because there was just not enough hours in the day. I still pop on at least once every couple of months and do an episode, but So I don't want to give them a shout out to esopodcast.com. There's a lot of podcasts on their network, and so they're
Yeah,
cool guys.
yeah, and I'll have links to all that too on the website. So wherever, if people are listening to this and you're on my website, you'll see the links for all that too. So
There you go. See, so I'll definitely make sure I send those to you.
yeah.
And it's I'm all over social media, and so yeah, like I said, I love meeting and talking to people. If you want to ask me questions about writing or about the books, I mean, I'm happy to talk either.
All right, great. Well, thanks a lot, Bobby. It was nice talking to you, and thanks for being on the show.
Well, my pleasure, Alan. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Meet the Thriller Author. You can visit our site at get.thrillingreads.com/podcast for more information on our podcasts. And you can also subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcatcher, like iTunes, the most popular one, of course. Just search for Meet the Thriller Author and you'll find me there. And I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/Meet Thriller Author. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your comments and your feedbacks on the shows. And I'll have a new podcast, new interview with a thriller author. I'll be posting them every Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. And don't forget to subscribe. And please visit my author website at alanpeterson.com.